In the spirit of the whole Aurora Forum, which focuses on how do you bring meaningful benefit to people's lives, what I hope to do is to make the case for focusing on the largest single cause of preventable death in the world, smoking. Currently, about 7 million people die every year in the world from smoking and the use of tobacco products. That's almost 20,000 people a day, every day. And it's likely to continue this century, killing about 1 billion people over the next 80 to 90 years. 1 billion. There is no other cause of death in the world that comes close. Yet most people think the job is done. Here I project the fact that while we have 7 million deaths a year today, that number will rise to 10 million even if we do everything right, for many reasons. If no children ever started smoking, we would still see 10 million deaths a year over the next few years, because the people who's smoking will take a long time before they either quit or die. If we project way out to 2060, that seems a long time, but that's how long the diseases associated with tobacco take. The most successful projection currently by the World Health Organization would suggest we'll have about 6 million people a year dying. That isn't success. That is an example of not having a high enough ambition. So let me go back to, again, the subject of a discussion in the last 2 days here in Yerevan. There were a lot of meetings around the role of science and technology, the role of innovation, the role of technology, the role of digital transformation, all in starting to address public health problems. Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum recently put out a view saying that all technologies are going to have a dramatic improvement on people's lives. Many of you, particularly the young people in your room, I hope will be going into careers in science and technology. And I hope that focusing on science and technology generally is not going to be good enough, but you apply your thinking to tackling smoking. Let me give you an example of what's needed. If we think of the next few years, the opportunity, first of all, to improve the lives of people who want to give up, quit smoking, is dramatically increasing. Currently, about 7% of people who say they want to quit or succeed, 7% will still be off their cigarettes at the end of a year. Only 7%. 93% will have continued to smoke. There are many reasons for it. One of it is being the incredibly poor investment in new technologies. And by technologies, I'm talking about pharmaceutical approaches, biotechnology, and even some of the new ways we have to stimulate behavior change through the use of the cell phone, through prompts. I believe that over the next 10 years, we're going to see an explosion of science understanding the brain, how we promote behavior, how we use the cell phone to stimulate people to continue to stay off their product, how we have better products in the market. With that, I think that we'll be able to get that cessation figure up to at least to 50%. All of these projects, our foundation are starting to support, and we are obviously very interested in any of you showing an interest in engaging. But many people don't want to quit. Many people believe they either like the nicotine or they feel they're getting some benefit from the nicotine. In the past, people would say, well, that's really stupid. They shouldn't. But that's ignoring the reality that for many people, there is a benefit they feel either in terms of creativity or functioning better or being able to have a neuropsychological lift. For them, the option of cessation isn't the only option. We now have an explosion of what are called harm reduction products. Products that don't burn, don't give you the death from cancers, but actually lower the risk dramatically, not to zero. So what are the kind of products we're seeing in the markets? Many of them will know from the Swedish snus being one example. Across Europe, we're seeing an explosion of e-cigarette and related use. That's another example. Heated tobacco products, like in this country, you've probably seen Grow or IQOS, and there are a whole range more, but they all have one common thing in mind. No longer do they give you the cancer-causing reasons why people die from cigarettes. When you stop burning it, the death rates go down dramatically. That simple fact is behind a revolution in thinking about harm reduction and the role of what we could be doing to bring the death rates down. Thirdly, at the moment, if you get a diagnosis of lung cancer, and sadly, many people in this country still smoke a lot. I've just been wandering the streets to do my own surveys. Many of them will be diagnosed of lung cancer before they can actually do much about it. 75% of people are diagnosed when they are going to be found to have a type of cancer that will only let them live for 5 years at most. Usually, most of them will be dead by 5 years. What we need are better diagnostics to be able to detect people very early enough for them to either have surgery or therapy to lead a complete or normal life, as we're seeing with other cancers. The good news is that the technology, the science, the advances are coming very fast. We're supporting a range of researchers looking at this, and I believe over the next 10, 15 years, we will end up seeing lung cancer being managed like a chronic disease, no longer being a death sentence, which it is today. And remember, lung cancer is the largest single cancer caused by tobacco use. 2 million people die a year just of that. Thirdly, we're starting to see that new forms of nicotine are likely to have an impact that may be positive on the brain. It's very interesting that when we look at all the studies in the world on people who smoke and don't smoke, the smokers die of lung cancer, heart disease, chronic lung disease. But one thing they don't get very much of is Parkinson's disease, as well as a range of neuropsychological conditions, suggesting that maybe the nicotine actually gives some benefits while the tar is giving the damage. If that's the case, we suspect that we will end up seeing nicotine used actually in very different ways going forward. I was inspired by this wonderful statue, 500 meters from here, just up the road, smoking woman, to remind us that our science has to be driven and underpinned by responding to the needs of women. What do I mean by that? First of all, it's very interesting when I walked around Yerevan the last couple of days, not too many women actually are smoking, which is a good thing. They are using hookah a lot, and I see the cafes are filled with people puffing away. IQOS has been launched for women, which is probably a better thing than a cigarette. But across much of Eastern Central Europe and the Central Asian republics, we are seeing young women taking up smoking at rates they never did in the past. Never. We're seeing smoking rates which used to be 2, 3, 4%, now being 15, 20, 25%. These are women under the age of 35. You know what that's going to do? With 100% assurance, that is going to mean that lung cancer is going to kill more women by far than breast cancer over the next 15, 20 years. And there's very little that's going to be done about it because governments are not focusing explicitly on how they address the needs of women as opposed to the general population. Think about the way we design our cessation products. The nicotine patch or gum was designed using the default male, not actually the needs of women in mind. Think about how we actually go about messaging to women. We subtly start telling them about the benefits of weight and weight loss if they continue smoking without thinking about some of the other issues that need to be addressed. Think about the design of products. It was Virginia Slims all those decades ago that designed cigarettes explicitly to get women to smoke. Well, where are the products explicitly to get women to not smoke? We believe this is a massive area that we also are going to be investing in under the guise of what's called femtech, feminist technology. And we would love to see if there are people here who can make sure the only person smoking in Yerevan is that smoking woman up there in the square. But let's go further and learn what else we can learn from the heritage of Armenia. I guess some of you who know who that is, hopefully the young ones do know, and I can identify Andrei Agassi, one of the great family members coming out of Armenia. And I put this up for a very good reason. We tend to focus on tobacco control without looking at positive messages of what people can do in their lives. When you address the positive, physical activity and physical activity promotion, you're giving a story of please do more. Please encourage, please enjoy yourself, have fun. Whereas if you're saying, don't smoke, you're wagging your finger. What happens if we combine those approaches? I did work in the US where we followed 100,000 people over a course of a few years, and we gave them all an incentive to increase their steps. Take a few more steps a day. We weren't interested in whether their physical activity would go up, which of course it did. We were interested in, once they were doing more activity, would they more likely to take part in a smoking cessation program? They were. Were they more likely to take part in a weight management program? They were. Were they more likely to go for screening for preventable cancers? They were. All of this suggests that we need to think about how we time and link our physical activity programs to those programs dealing not just with tobacco, but all healthy lifestyles. Activity is the most powerful, simplest way for people to feel good about themselves, take control over their own lives, and then they feel more empowered to tackle the really tough things like smoking, weight management, and so on. If we're able to start putting these technologies together, we can start bending the trends. And instead of having 6.5 million people or well over 1 billion smokers by the 2060s, I believe that we can get to well under 300 million. That's still a lot of smokers. But remember, it's down from 1.3 billion smokers on the planet today, a massive decline. And what it's going to take, I would argue, is going to be much stronger investment in science, technology, and innovation, and particularly the role of women in driving this change.